You ever have one of those moments where someone's so confident they're right, they don't even pause to ask if maybe just maybe theory dead wrong? Yeah, that was Karen. Well, Amanda, technically. But around here, nobody calls her that. And I sure as hell want not after what she pulled. The morning she called the cops on me for parking at my own ranch, I was leaning against my gate sipping coffee, boots dusty, sun barely up. 3 sheriff cruisers had pulled up like I was running some kind of backwoods criminal enterprise. Karen was already in full meltdown mode, pointing at my truck, screaming that I was trespassing on HOA land. Her voice bounced off the barn like a coyote in heat. Arrest him. He's violating HOA property. That's our community barn. I didn't flinch. I just folded my arms and said, Officer, this entire 200 acres? I own it. All of it. Including the spot she's standing on. Now, the look on the deputy's face was priceless. He blinked like he didn't know whether to laugh or arrest me. That's when I handed him a file: deeds, maps, property surveys going back to 1936. Karen's jaw dropped. She froze for a second, then spun around and bolted back toward the clubhouse. But let me back up a bit. See, this didn't start with a 911 call. It started with a clipboard and a fake smile. My name's Eli Morrison. I'm 44, ex-military, been running this ranch for the past 12 years. My granddad built this place with his bare hands and a stubborn streak longer than the state of Texas. I like peace and quiet. Sunsets, horses, fixing things that probably should have been replaced years ago. Then one day, out of nowhere, they built a subdivision around me, called it Sagebrush Heights. Sounds fancy, right? It came with an HOA. Of course it did. At first, I thought it might be a good thing. More neighbors meant more hands if something went wrong. But within 3 months, Karen got herself elected HOA president. She brought muffins to meetings, called herself a community visionary, and handed out rulebooks like they were holy scripture. One day, she came stomping up my gravel road with her pastel clipboard and a smug little smirk. You need to paint your barn white. It's an HOA requirement. I looked at her, smiled just a little, and said, Ma'am, this here's Morrison Ranch. Not part of your HOA. Been in my family since before Sagebrush Heights was a cactus. She blinked, like her brain couldn't process the words. Then she turned around without saying a thing and left. I figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. Next thing I know, I'm getting HOA newsletters in my mailbox. A brand new gate appeared at the end of my road with a keypad I never got the code for. Then came the warning letters: code violations for storing hay bales too close to a fence, for letting cattle graze, unsupervised, and my personal favorite, for owning a rooster that crowed too loud. I kid you not. Still, I tried to play nice. I went to one of their meetings, sat in the back. Karen stood up front talking about mailbox uniformity and pastel flower beds, like it was the United Nations. Excuse me, I said, when she finally paused to sip her lemon water. I've never signed anything with your HOA. Why am I getting citations? She tilted her head, all condescending. You live within the Sagebrush Heights perimeter, so you're under our jurisdiction. It's automatic. My land predates this entire neighborhood. You can't retroactively claim it. She just smiled and said, then maybe it's time you moved. That's when I knew. This wasn't about community. This was about control. So I started digging. County records, property deeds, zoning maps. Took me 2 full weeks, but what I found made my blood run cold. The HOA had built their clubhouse, garden plots, and part of their walking trail on my land. Not just a little. We're talking 4 acres. No permits. No lease. Just assumed I wouldn't notice. I didn't confront them right away. I waited. Then one morning, I drove my old Ford right up to their precious clubhouse, parked square in the middle of their flower garden, and started unloading hay. Karen came sprinting like her pearls were on fire. You can't do this. This is community property. No, I said, cool as a creek. This is my property. And you're trespassing. That's when she called the cops. Which brings us back to the start. Now, while the officers were still processing the deeds I'd handed over, we heard Ida boom off in the distance. Smoke started rising from the east field. My hay barn. It was on fire. I dropped the file and ran. Neighbors came out with hoses and buckets. The flames were already licking the rafters by the time I got there. That barn held memories. My granddad's tools. My dad's tractor. I stood there choking on smoke and disbelief. Fire crews showed up, got it under control, but the damage was done. The chief pulled me aside. Started at the back, he said. Looks intentional. We'll investigate. I didn't sleep that night. Next morning, I remembered my old trail cam on the shed roof. Popped the SD card into my laptop and there he was. A teenager, hoodie, sneakers I'd seen around the neighborhood. Tossing a flaming rag into the barn. I turned it in. The police opened an arson investigation. But here's the twist. As word spread, something shifted. Neighbors who never said a word started knocking. One guy, Ben, said, I didn't know they built the clubhouse on your land. That ain't right. People were waking up. Karen? She vanished. For 3 days, nobody saw her. Then she sent flyers claiming I was trying to destroy the community. She called an emergency HOA meeting. I showed up with copies of every document and handed them out to the whole room. Karen tried to shut it down. Claimed I forged the deeds. But the room had gone quiet. Someone finally asked, is this true? Did we build on his land? She didn't answer. Just stormed out. But the games weren't over. The next day, I came home to find a padlock on my gate. A shiny new HOA sign zip-tied to the post. Private property. No trespassing. I called Sheriff Dalton. He showed up with bolt cutters and 2 deputies. Karen arrived 10 minutes later, screaming bloody murder. He can't be here. That's HOA land. Dalton just held up the deed. This land belongs to Mr. Morrison. You're the one trespassing. Karen's face twisted like she'd bitten into a lemon. She didn't unlock it. So Dalton cut the chain himself. I walked through that gate like I was reclaiming something sacred. But the final straw? A few days later, I found a bulldozer in my pasture. Fence knocked down. Cattle scattered. They had started grading the land for a new HOA amphitheater. No permits. No notice. Just steel and arrogance. That night, I stood up at a community meeting I organized right there on the ranch. I laid it all out: fraud, trespassing, vandalism, the arson. Even played a voicemail I got anonymously that said, he's next. He knows too much. People gasped, but they didn't look at me with fear. They looked at Karen with disgust. I hired a land use attorney. We filed a lawsuit. Subpoenaed HOA board members. One of the contractors turned whistleblower. Sent us emails, audio, even a signed NDA showing they knew they were building illegally. Then we found the smoking gun. Karen knew the land wasn't theirs. She signed a memo 2 years prior acknowledging it. Buried it in an unfiled report. Court date came fast. I walked in with my boots polished and my head high. The judge looked over everything. Every map. Every video. Every violation. Then he leaned forward and said, the HOA is hereby dissolved. Vacate all unauthorized structures within 14 days. Karen wasn't there. But as I stepped outside, a sheriff cruiser pulled up. Out stepped Karen in handcuffs, pale as ash. She didn't even look at me. Just stared at the ground. That night, I sat on the porch with my buddy Luis, sipping sweet tea while the stars came out. You did it, he said. No, I told him we did. This land did. And just when I thought it was over, the FBI called. Turns out, Karen wasn't the only one. Mark Lua, the developer who funded the whole neighborhood, was indicted on federal charges. Money laundering. Land fraud. Turns out my ranch wasn't just a home. It was the crack that broke a nationwide shell game wide open. I'm just a rancher. A quiet man with a love for honest work. But sometimes it takes one quiet man to remind the world. You can build fences, write bylaws, and draw fake maps all you want, but the land never lies. So tell me, if this happened in your neighborhood, whose side would you be on? Leave me a comment. Let's talk about what justice really looks like.